Welcome back to Mass Mutation Month. Last video we took a look at all the new Sanctum cards in Mass Mutation. Today we're going to be diving into the new cards coming out of House Saurian. Once again, there will be spoilers, so please stop watching now if you don't want any of the new cards spoiled for you. For the rest of us, let's get into it. I'm Keyforge Concepts, and this is our Mass Mutation Month review of House Saurian. Let's start with the House Hybrid Saurian cards. Within Saurian, these cards will have the ending Saurus in their name, and in other houses they can identify by the prefix Dino. The Saurian House Hybrid cards give the card +1 power, as well as the play effect, you may exalt this card. If you do, deal 3 damage to a creature. The +1 power to these cards is nice, however, I'm not sold on its effect. 3 damage is solid, but I'm not sure if exalting and potentially giving your opponent 1 amber is worth it. I think in decks that have Saurian and are able to make use of amber on their own creatures, this becomes a good effect to have. However, it seems like a liability in a lot of decks, especially in decks that don't have Saurian in them. At least the effect is optional. The first card we're going to be looking at is Beware the Ides, an action with 1 amber pip that has the play effect deal 23 damage to a creature in the center of its controller's battle line. 23 is a comical amount of damage. I'm not sure of the significance of the number 23 in House Saurian. Let me know if you get the reference down in the comments. This card will only work on creatures in the center of a battle line. So if your opponent has an even amount of creatures and thus no center, then you may be forced to turn this card on yourself if you play it. While 23 damage is enough to kill any card before upgrades in the game, most of them 5 times over, no amount of damage is going to do anything to a warded creature. This also becomes weaker in multiples, since you won't be able to use 2 of them back to back unless you otherwise remove more creatures from your opponent's battle line. Overall, not the greatest start to our House Saurian review. Next up is Citizen Shrix, a 3-power creature with the play and reap effect, exalt Citizen Shrix, steal 1 amber. This is a disgruntled, mutated version of Senator Shrix from Worlds Collide. It has a very interesting effect in that the amber you exalt on Shrix basically negates its steal. This is delayed, however, which means you will initially have the upper hand until your opponent can destroy Citizen Shrix. This card also has the benefit of being in House Saurian. Since Saurian has so many ways to manipulate and use amber on their creatures to their advantage, you'll be banking that you can negate the potential value given to your opponent by exalting. If you have a deck in which you can protect your amber, then this will be a very valuable card to have. Next, we have Consul Primus, a 3-power creature with Enhance 1 Capture icon, and the Reap effect, move 1 amber from a creature to another creature. One way to make your amber on creatures less risky is by simply putting them on your opponents instead. That way you will gain the amber when their creature dies instead of vice versa. Being able to capture amber in Saurian is also a plus, since it can be a risk-free way of activating some of its powerful card effects. This card isn't the most resilient, however, and having a reap effect means that this will be slow coming out of your hand, especially compared to a card like Chant of Hubris. With an established board, however, Consul Primus can be a threatening card. Next up is Cornicen Octavia, a 5-power 1-armor creature with the action Capture 2 Amber. As just mentioned, capturing is great in Saurian. 5-power 1-armor is also a pretty strong body. Cornicen itself cannot abuse its captured amber, however through in-house support this card can absolutely negate your opponent's amber generation if you can keep it alive. Solid card overall, potentially very oppressive in certain Saurian lists. Next is Curse of Vanity, an action card with 1 amber pip with the play effect exalt a friendly creature and an enemy creature. In theory, you gain the most out of this card, 1 because you get an amber pip, and 2 because hopefully your deck will have a way to make use of exalted amber. You'll see that this is a common theme in Saurian throughout this review. If your deck does not have any way to do that, then this card could be a potential liability. Even if you're netting 2 amber from this, there are situations where you can't afford to give your opponent a single potential amber. Another deck-reliant card in Mass Mutation Saurian. Next is Defense Initiative, an action with the play effect Ward a creature. you may exalt that creature. If you exalt it, ward each of its neighbors. A single ward for free is great on its own. In most cases, I think I would happily exalt one of my creatures to give myself 2 more wards on the field. There's not much to say here. I think this is just a great card. 3 wards for your creatures are very strong, and if you have something that can use the Exalted Amber, then it's even better. Next, we have Faust the Great, a 4-power creature that reads, your opponent's keys cost +1 for each friendly creature with Amber on it. It also has the play effect, you may exalt a friendly creature. I can see this card being compared a lot to Rhetor Galeen, both being key cost increasing creatures that have an immediate impact when played. To Faust's credit, he has 1 extra power, and is potentially able to make keys cost more than Rhetor if you already have a developed board. However, Faust is entirely reliant on already having a developed board. As an emergency key cost increase, he's not nearly as effective as Rhetor Galeen. That makes them 2 different cards with 2 different strengths, which is good and healthy for the game. There are times where I would prefer to have one over the other. I think if I had to choose one though, I think I would take Rhetor over this card as a more consistent source of Amber control. Still not a bad card, but not super amazing in certain situations. Next, we have Galeatops, a 12-power creature that reads, Galeatops only deals 4 damage when fighting. This creature draws a lot of comparison to cards like Pterodactyl and Gargantodon, both being huge power creatures that deal limited damage with fighting. Interesting fact that these creatures are all considered beasts, I suppose implying that they don't have the same level of intelligence or sophistication as the rest of the dinosaur Saurians. I still find it weird that Saurians use and weaponize such similar creatures to them. That would be like the equivalent of humans domesticating gorillas, attaching battle armor on them and then riding them into battle. I digress. Galeatops' distinguishing feature from these 2 worlds collide creatures is that it doesn't come into play stunned, which means you can ready it and start fighting with it as soon as the next turn. 4 damage is enough to trade well with most creatures, however it'll be really inefficient against the big creatures in Sanctum and ironically Saurian. With 12 power, however, against certain decks this will be trading incredibly well with your opponent. The next card we have is Monument to Ludo, an artifact with the action move 1 amber from a creature to the common supply. If Praefectus Ludo is in your discard pile, move 2 amber from that creature to the common supply instead. Now there are 5 different monuments in Mass Mutation Saurian, each corresponding to their own Saurian common, Praefectus Ludo in this case. If you have at least one of the commons in your deck, it has a chance of procedurally generating its relevant monument. All monuments are artifacts that have actions that mirror the effects of the cards they're based off of. For example, as you can see, Ludo's claim to success is being able to make Saurian Amber safe by moving it to the common supply, and his monument has a similar effect. All of the monument effects also increase in effectiveness when their creature equivalent is in the discard pile, which is thematically fitting since monuments are usually built to honor those who have passed. The best part about these monuments is that they aren't overly reliant on their creature cards. In this case, being able to remove 1 amber off a creature every Saurian turn is still a great artifact to have. The next 4 monuments you're about to see are fairly powerful, so let this set the tone going forward. The next monument is Monument to Faust, which has the action keys cost +1 during your opponent's next turn. If Faust the Great is in your discard pile, keys cost +2 during your opponent's next turn instead. This card can come attached, obviously, to Faust the Great. Honestly, I like this monument more than I like Faust itself in some situations. 1 pinch amber control in Saurian is pretty nice, and having +2 amber cost increase if a Faust is in your discard is substantial enough to take most opponents off check. Having it on an artifact makes it recurable and much more safe than it being on a creature. The next monument is Monument to Octavia, which has the action effect a friendly creature captures 1 amber. If Cornicen Octavia is in your discard pile, that creature captures 2 amber instead. This card can come paired with Cornicen Octavia. This is another card that I think could be potentially more powerful than the creature itself. City Gates was an incredibly powerful card in Worlds Collide Saurian, because why exalt your creatures and risk amber when you can just capture it from your opponent instead? Potentially capturing 2 amber onto something that thrives with amber on it is a very powerful ability. In most cases, I think that this might be better than Monument to Faust as amber control. A great card and a solid piece of amber control. The fourth monument is Monument to Primus, which has the action effect, move 1 amber from a friendly creature to another friendly creature. If Consul Primus is in your discard pile, move 1 amber from a creature to another creature instead. This card can come with Consul Primus. Moving amber between your 2 creatures is okay. The real power comes from having Consul Primus in your discard, where you can suddenly start putting your amber on your opponent's creatures instead. And once again, being an artifact, this is much more safe and consistent than using Primus yourself. With Primus in the discard, this becomes a very strong card in certain Saurian lines. The final monument is Monument to Shrix, which reads, you may spend amber on Monument to Shrix as if it were in your pool. It also has the action effect, move 1 amber from your pool to Monument to Shrix. If Citizen Shrix is in your discard pile, move 1 amber from any player's pool to Monument to Shrix instead. This card has the chance to come with Citizen Shrix. This is a Saurian take on a card like Pocket Universe or Safe Place. And with Shrix in your discard, this becomes very oppressive. If your opponent has no artifact control, this essentially becomes an action steal one that your opponent doesn't have any counterplay for. A fantastic card for Saurian. Out of the 5 monuments we've seen in Saurian, they're all pretty strong. This might not be the most consistent one, but with Shrix in the discard, I think this one can be incredibly strong. The next card is Sagittarie's Gaze, an action with 1 amber pip and enhance 1 damage, and the play effect, exalt a damaged creature. Think of this card as putting a bounty on your opponent's creature. This will obviously be best when followed up with more damage to destroy the creature with the amber on it before they can take advantage or maybe get rid of it somehow. Obviously, don't play this on a Saurian creature that can take advantage of amber. Blood Money from Brobnar is a comparable card. Both are netting 2 amber on a successful kill because of Sagittarie's amber pip. However, Sagittarii has an enhanced damage to go with it, as well as being simply more creative and interesting design-wise, even if they ultimately accomplish the same thing. Not a bad card against non-Saurian decks. Next up is Spoils of Battle, an action card with 1 amber pip that has the play effect, a friendly creature captures 1 amber. Each creature with amber on it captures 1 amber from its opponent. If you have a developed Saurian or Sanctum board state with captured or exalted amber, this card can generate a great amount of value for you. This card also thrives in multiples for mass amber capture. Even worst case, this card gives you an amber and captures maybe 1 to 2 amber, which is still a decent effect. Being in Saurian, this automatically makes it a good card to have. Next is Blast from the Past, an action card with the play effect, exalt a friendly creature. Archive a Saurian creature from your discard pile. Deal damage equal to the archived creature's power to an enemy creature. I love the name and I love the flavor of this card, as a dinosaur rises from the dead to bring destruction onto its opponents. Obviously in Saurian you can be hitting some pretty high health creatures, which means that this will usually be enough damage to completely destroy an enemy creature. Coupling that with the fact that you're also bringing back a potentially valuable and threatening card, this gets a thumbs up from me. Great card. Next is Curia Saurus, an artifact that reads, each creature with amber on it gains destroyed, move 1 amber from this creature to the most powerful enemy creature. This is a game-changing card, and one that might be hard to maneuver around for some players. When this card is in play, it's great for your creatures with only 1 amber on them, since your opponent won't be getting that amber back when they are destroyed. Rather, their strongest creature will, which means that you can potentially capture it back. This only works with 1 amber per creature though, so creatures with multiple amber on them receive diminishing returns. So ideally, you want to trade and pile up your amber onto one of your opponent's creatures and then kill that creature off, taking the majority of its amber. However, with a strategy like this, you'd have to be actively killing your own creatures, potentially ruining your board control. That entire mindset with this card is a trap, and will most likely be detrimental to your game if you cannot immediately replenish your board or simultaneously wipe theirs. How this should function in your play is as a card that makes your Exalted and Captured Amber a bit safer and overall less punishing. Avoid mass stacking and maintain your board control, and eventually things will go your way. This card will definitely mess with newer players finding this in their decks. Next is Dark Centurion, a 5-power creature with Enhance to Capture and the action effect move 1 amber from a creature to the common supply. If you do, ward that creature. 5 power is pretty good. 2 capture enhance is pretty good. Denying your opponent an amber and then warding that creature is really, really good. I can hear all the Sanctum Knights from the last video wanting this guy on their team. Perhaps the argument is that wards are generally less powerful in this set with damage enhancements running around, and removing an amber off a valuable Saurian creature could potentially weaken them. It's also an action, so it's not like you're generating any amber for yourself. These are all good cases for this card not being overpowered, however, I still think this is a very strong card for Saurian to have. Next up, we're looking at Dreadbone Decimus. A 5-power creature with the play and fight effect, you may exalt Dreadbone Decimus. If you do, destroy a creature with lower power than Dreadbone Decimus. This has the potential for creature control, which is nice, but you're paying 1 amber every time. You can compare this to a card like Whisper, where you were literally paying 1 amber every time. While Whisper could destroy a Gargantodon no problem, Dreadbone does have his limits. However, the trade-off here is being in-house Saurian, and having the potential to be able to remove or use your Exalted Amber. This will still deal with most creatures in the game, and also deal with a lot of the House Sanctum creatures with their 4-power 2 armor. It's also a play effect as well, which makes it a lot faster than Whisper. Overall, this is a decent card. Next is Gladiodontus, a 15-power creature that reads Gladiodontus enters play stunned. Gladiodontus only deals 5 damage when fighting. It also has the fight and reap effect if this is the first time Gladiodontus has been used this turn, ready and enrage it. This is another big creature that enters play stunned and deals reduced damage. However, dealing 5 damage instead of 4 is pretty good and allows it to trade with many more creatures. Its fight reap effect is also very powerful. It means you'll basically be getting 2 uses out of this card in a turn. So you're either going to get 10 damage onto creatures during your turn, or 1 amber from a reap, and then a bonus 5 damage. It's a little slow since it comes into play stunned, but once this is up, this is going to be a hard and fast-hitting removal creature. Next is Hedonistic Intent, an action card with 1 amber pip that has the play effect Exalt each flank creature. This card would be awful if it wasn't in Saurian. This is basically banking on your Saurian list being able to abuse the Exalted Amber while your opponent hopefully can't. You could also manipulate this in your favor, playing this when you have no creatures or even 1 creature on board, since then you'd only exalt 1. This will be a star in some decks and a bust in many others. Next is Humble, an action card with 1 amber pip that has the play effect Exhaust a creature. If you do, move 3 amber from that creature to the common supply. Love the reference here. Being able to deny 3 amber is strong, but you need to exhaust them to do so. If you find yourself with your amber on a creature that can't otherwise use it or is generally just not that strong, then this is a great play. Ideally, you can play this with a creature out of house. Since you wouldn't be able to use them that turn anyways, this negates the downside of the exhaust entirely. Most of the time, I can see this being played to deny 1 or 2 amber from your opponent, which still isn't bad, especially with the amber pip attached. This will be a great card to have if you have capture in your other houses. Next is Saurian Egg, a 1-power 5 armor creature with 1 amber pip that reads Saurian Egg cannot fight or reap. It also has the Omni effect, discard the top 2 cards of your deck. If you discard any Saurian creatures this way, put them into play ready, give them 3+1 power counters, and destroy Saurian Egg. This can lead to some pretty strong scenarios for your board, like having a 6-power Primus or an 8-power capturing Cornicen. And it's an Omni effect as well, which means that you can always use it on your next turn. Also, something that I overlooked when I first read this is that it actually gives you an Amber Pip, which is really nice to have as well. This is reliant, though, on you having Saurian creatures in your deck. Since it's a discard, you could potentially throw out some valuable actions or even creatures from other houses, so this will require some awareness of your remaining deck to use effectively. With 6 overall health but only 1 power, this also isn't going to be trading that well with your opponent's creatures. Most time attacking 2 of their creatures into Saurian Egg will be enough to destroy it. This card will live and die by the discards you get with it. You could lose some, but the payoff you have with this card is potentially huge. The next card we're going to look at is Senator Quintina, a 5-power creature that reads, after a creature reaps, exalt it. This makes for interesting board states, and it's an interesting way to punish reaping by having the opponent potentially give the amber they gained by reaping back to their opponent. Once again, in an ideal list, this is actually rewarding in Saurian, so that you can abuse the amber that you have on your creatures while reaping. This will be great in dominant Saurian lists, but in reality, I think this will make a lot of decks clunky and potentially a lot more dangerous to play. The next card we're going to look at is Siren Horn, an upgrade with 1 amber pip that reads, this creature gains, before fight, move 1 amber from this creature to the creature it fights. This is another creative way to get rid of your exalted amber, by giving it to your opponent right before you hopefully destroy them and take it back. While it doesn't provide extra survivability, this is a great card that incentivizes using Saurian's physical strengths and fighting your opponent's board. The bonus pip is also pretty nice too. While situational and probably not often repeatable, since you do need to fight, this is still a great card overall. The next card we're going to look at is Amphora Captura, an artifact with 2 enhance amber pips, 2 enhance damage icons, and 2 enhance draw icons. It also reads, when resolving a bonus icon, you may choose to resolve it as a capture bonus icon instead. This card indirectly gives your deck so much. The enhancements alone make this a very valuable card. And its effect is pretty nice as well. I like that it gives you the option to treat it like a capture. That way you're not stuck not being able to generate any amber or draw. This card is also going to be able to trigger with all your action and upgrade cards that naturally have amber pips themselves. And of course, being in Saurian, this opens up the possibility for using and abusing that captured amber. A great card and a very interesting piece of amber control. Next is Crystal Surge, an action card with 1 amber pip that has the play effect Exalt each mutant creature. I'm still not convinced with these mutant specific cards. Much like Hedonistic Intent, the hope here is that as Saurian, you're able to make use of your Exalted Amber while your opponent cannot. In Mass Mutation, this will be okay, but against other sets, this card is going to hurt you much more than it helps in many situations. Next is Forum of Giants, an artifact with 1 amber pip that reads, at the start of your turn, the player who controls the most powerful creature gains 1 amber. Saurian have some of the biggest creatures in the game. Being rewarded for having those creatures on board further incentivizes what Saurian already wants to do, which is gain board control. Now note that in the case of a tie, the person who controls Forum of Giants decides whose creature gets the amber, since it will fall during their active turn, which gives the owner of this card a slight advantage. A great card to have in the majority of Saurian decks. Next, we're looking at High Priest Torvus, a 4-power 1-armor creature. With the Reap effect, you may exalt High Priest Torvus. If you do, after you resolve your next action card this turn, return it to your hand instead of placing it in your discard pile. While slow, this card is still a huge threat. Being able to cast certain actions twice in a Saurian turn have huge implications. Double Blast from the Past, double City-State Interest, double Defense Initiative, double Sagittarie's Gaze. With double It's Coming, you could search and grab both halves of a gigantic creature in a single turn. While Mass Mutation did remove some of the problematic Saurian actions like Tribute, Imperium, and Six Semper, there are still a mess of tools to take advantage of this in Saurian. The next card we're going to look at is Legion's March, an action with 1 Amber Pip with the play effect for the remainder of the turn. After you use a dinosaur creature, deal 1 damage to each non-dinosaur creature. This is great within an already established board. You could potentially wipe out some weaker board states without actually fighting with your creatures. However, this is very dependent on already having a board state. This is useless if you draw it before you draw your Saurian creatures, or if you don't have the board to keep them there. It also can backfire on your non-Saurian cards or non-dinosaur Saurian cards as well. For those reasons, this seems to be a pretty situational and a pretty underwhelming rare for House Saurian. Next is Nerotaurus, a 6-power creature with the fight effect, enemy creatures cannot reap during your opponent's next turn, and the reap effect, enemy creatures cannot fight during your opponent's next turn. This is a very interesting control card. Basically, your enemy creatures must do what Nerotaurus does. I love the flexibility here. If you reap, then you effectively prevent your opponent's creatures from fighting, protecting your creatures and allowing them to more safely exalt. If you fight, then you're denying your opponent the ability to reap and take advantage of their own board state next turn. Overall, a fantastic and well-designed card. Next is Optio Gorkus, a 3-power, 3-armor creature with elusive that reads each of Optio Gorkus's neighbors gains destroyed, move each amber on this creature to a neighboring Optio Gorkus. One of the smaller Saurian creatures we've seen, however the 3-power and elusive make up for that. This is another creative way of protecting your captured amber, by having it all fall onto Optio Gorkus if they're destroyed. And with 3 armor and elusive, this card has a decent amount of survivability. Keep in mind if you have something like Praefectus Ludo on board, you can choose to resolve Ludo's destroyed ability first, so having Optio on board won't provide anti-synergy to amber denial mechanics. A decent card overall. Next is Patronage, an action with the play effect, move half the amber from a creature to your pool, rounding up. Move the remaining amber from that creature to your opponent's pool. This seems to be a much more balanced take on 6-amper Tyrannosaurus. To gain the amber, you'll need to split it with your opponent, which won't be ideal in situations where they can threaten to check with that amber. If you're able to keep an odd amount of amber on a creature, however, you will benefit the most of this since you are rounding up the amber that you capture. Think of it this way. You are going to gain none of the amber on your creature if they were destroyed anyways. Getting half or more and denying that amount from your opponent is still a pretty strong amber swing, even if it feels like they're gaining something as well. While definitely not as strong as 6-amper, this seems like a healthy and much more balanced take on the card. Next is Scylla, a 7-power creature that reads each enemy creature gains reap, deal 4 damage to this creature. 7 power is great, and 4 damage only to your opponent's creatures on reap will be enough to destroy the majority of them outright. Could this backfire and enable some destroyed effects? Absolutely, but the big body and passive are still incredibly punishing for your opponent's board. This is a strong card that always comes paired with the card we'll see next. Together they make for a pretty fun duo. This card is Charybdis. I really hope I'm saying that right. It has 7 power, and it reads each enemy creature gains, before fight, lose 1 amber. Losing an amber on fight is amazing, and I think it's the better effect of the 2 cards. The reason being that in order to even destroy this card, they'll likely need to fight, sacrificing amber to cut their losses there. This is a great card on its own, and getting 2 7-power creatures with great passive effects makes the Scylla Charybdis combo very formidable. I would be very happy to get this duo in any of my Saurian lists. And finally, we have the gigantic Saurian creature, Deusillus, a 20-power creature that you can only play when you have both halves of its card. It has the play effect, capture all of your opponent's amber, deal 5 damage to an enemy creature, and the fight reap effect, move 1 amber from Deusillus to the common supply, deal 2 damage to each enemy creature. So let's break this down. 20 power makes it the strongest creature in Keyforge without upgrades. To destroy this through battle, your opponent would probably have to throw 5 or more creatures at this, which is insane. Now the play effect is absolutely great. Capturing all your opponent's amber, no matter the number, makes this card a high amber punish card, only the second one we've seen in this new set. Now obviously this won't be as reliable in many decks due to the difficulty of getting this out timely, but it's still something that has to be respected. Dealing 5 damage to a creature is just icing on the cake really. Most times it will allow you to destroy a creature of your choosing outright. And as if that wasn't enough, on Fight and Reap, not only are you denying your opponent some of their amber back, you're also slowly destroying the rest of their battle line at the same time. This card is a problem. If your opponent doesn't have the board clear or removal to deal with this, then Deusillus can spiral out of control in just a few Saurian turns. This is a huge swing card and a force to be reckoned with in Mass Mutation. So now let's quickly review what we can expect from Saurian in Mass Mutation. As expected from last set, Saurian creatures are big and strong as ever. They tend to have higher power than Sanctum, but a little less armor. This is going to help Saurian trade effectively and maintain board control so that they can take advantage of their effects. Also signature of Saurian last set was their Exalt mechanic, which makes its return in Mass Mutation. The big distinguishing factor here is how safe their amber is on their creatures. Saurian still has the tools to deny their opponent Exalted Amber, however these methods are generally a little less straightforward than the denial in Worlds Collide, which means a Saurian player will have to be a little more creative if they don't want their opponent taking advantage of the Exalt mechanic. Saurian also seems to have a decent amount of amber control, mostly through capture and key cost increase. The big change here is that their amber control is much more creature oriented, meaning Saurian will need to control the board state and keep their creatures on board to make efficient use of this. And finally, we're happy to see that a lot of the problem cards that made Worlds Collide Saurian very oppressive will not be making a return in Mass Mutation, with some alternative cards introduced instead that seem to tone down and make Mass Mutation Saurian a little more balanced. Overall, Mass Mutation Saurian has definitely been knocked down a notch. However, I still expect them to be a solid house that can be competitive with the right amber protection tools. That concludes our review of the new Mass Mutation cards from House Saurian. I'm interested to see how the house fares compared to how they did in Worlds Collide. Let me know how you think they'll play down below. What cards did I underestimate? What cards are you looking forward to? Join us for our next video where we will be reviewing the new cards from fan favorite House Shadows. Thanks again, stay well, and I will see you in the next video.